The sun was gentle that afternoon, casting golden rays across the quiet city park. It was the kind of day when mothers sat with strollers under the trees, old men fed pigeons with bits of bread, and children laughed as they slid down shiny metal slides. The park was alive with joy, yet in the middle of that happiness one woman sat quietly, her eyes thoughtful but kind. Her name was Clara. She was 26 years old and worked as a nanny for different families in the city. Her job was not glamorous, but it was honest. She wore a simple blue dress that had faded from many washes, and her shoes were slightly scuffed from walking long distances every day. Clara never minded. She believed comfort mattered more than appearance. Still, she always carried herself with quiet dignity, the kind of presence that made strangers trust her without even knowing why. That afternoon, Clara had just finished her work early. The family she usually worked for had gone on a trip, and she found herself free with nothing to do. She decided to visit the park, partly to relax and partly because she enjoyed being around children. Watching them play always reminded her of the innocence of life, something she treasured deeply. As she sat on a wooden bench, Clara noticed a little girl near the playground. The girl looked no older than 6. She wore a cream-colored dress with little flowers embroidered near the hem, and in her small hands she clutched a stuffed rabbit so tightly that its ears bent awkwardly. But what caught Clara's attention was not the dress or the toy. It was the look on the girl's face. The little one's wide brown eyes darted around the park with a mixture of fear and confusion. Her tiny shoulders trembled, and though children laughed nearby, she did not join them. She seemed lost, completely out of place in the cheerful atmosphere. Clara's heart tightened. She had seen that look before in children, panic mixed with helplessness. Without hesitation, she rose from her bench and walked slowly toward the girl, making sure not to frighten her. When she reached her, Clara bent down to meet the child's eyes. "Hello, sweetheart," she said gently, her voice warm like a soft blanket. "Are you all right? You look a little scared." The girl sniffled, hugging her rabbit closer. Her lips quivered as though she was about to cry. I can't find my daddy," she whispered, her small voice breaking with fear. Clara's expression softened even more. "Oh, darling, don't worry," she said reassuringly. "You're not alone. I'll stay with you until we find him. What's your name?" The girl hesitated for a moment, then whispered, "My name is Lily." "Lily," Clara repeated with a smile. "That's such a pretty name. My name is Clara. It's nice to meet you, Lily, even if it's in a little scary moment." Lily's bottom lip trembled again, and suddenly she stepped forward, burying her face into Clara's shoulder. Instinctively, Clara wrapped her arms around her, giving the comfort the child so desperately needed. She could feel how small and fragile Lily was, like holding a tiny bird. Clara rubbed her back slowly, whispering calming words until the trembling lessened. "It's all right, Lily, I'll help you. We'll find your daddy together," Clara said softly. Minutes passed. To distract Lily, Clara began telling small stories about the stuffed rabbit. She made up a tale about the rabbit going on an adventure, climbing a mountain of pillows and meeting butterflies that gave him magical wings. Slowly, Lily's tears dried, and her frightened expression softened into a shy smile. "You're funny," Lily giggled, her voice still shaky but lighter. Clara smiled. "And you're very brave. I know it's scary to lose sight of your daddy, but you're doing so well." Lily clung to her hand, refusing to let go. To anyone watching, it would have looked like Clara was her mother or sister, the bond forming so naturally. But what Clara didn't know was that Lily's father wasn't just any parent. He was a man whose name carried weight in boardrooms and business magazines. His face often appeared on television interviews, his voice commanding respect wherever he went. He was Daniel Carter, a millionaire CEO who ran one of the most powerful companies in the city. At that very moment, Daniel was only a short distance away, frantically searching for his daughter. He had turned his head for just a second to answer an urgent phone call, and when he looked back, Lily was gone. His heart pounded with fear. For all his wealth, all his success, none of it mattered compared to his daughter's safety. His eyes swept across the park, sharp and desperate. Then suddenly he saw her. His little Lily, safe and smiling again, in the arms of a stranger. Daniel froze, his heart beating unevenly. Relief rushed through him, but so did curiosity. Who was this young woman who had comforted his daughter so gently? From a distance, he could see the warmth in Clara's eyes, the way she knelt to the girl's level, never rushing her, never letting her feel alone. It was something he rarely saw, even among the professional nannies he hired. But Daniel didn't approach right away. For a moment, he stood still, watching the scene. There was something captivating about it. He was used to people looking at him with admiration, with respect, sometimes with envy. But this woman wasn't even aware of him. She gave her kindness freely, without knowing who Lily's father was or how wealthy he might be. Clara, meanwhile, focused only on Lily. She brushed strands of hair from the girl's face and asked softly, "Can you tell me what your daddy looks like? Maybe we can spot him together." Lily sniffled and nodded. "He's tall, and he wears a black coat, and he always tells me he'll never let me get lost," Clara smiled. "That sounds like a wonderful daddy. I'm sure he's looking for you right now, just as worried as you are. How about we walk a little and see if we can find him?" The girl nodded, holding Clara's hand tightly. Together they began to walk slowly along the path. Clara stayed calm, her voice gentle as she pointed out birds, flowers, and the laughter of other children, all to keep Lily's mind from panicking again. Daniel followed at a short distance, his heart swelling with emotions he didn't expect. There was relief, yes, but also gratitude toward this stranger who had shown his daughter so much care. He didn't know who she was, but something told him this meeting would not end like a simple chance encounter. As Clara guided Lily forward, she finally noticed a tall man walking quickly toward them. He had sharp features, neatly combed dark hair, and eyes that carried both power and deep concern. Clara could tell instantly this was Lily's father. "Daddy!" Lily cried with joy, breaking into a run. Daniel bent down and scooped his daughter into his arms, holding her tightly as though he would never let her go again. "Lily, sweetheart, you scared me," he whispered, his voice trembling with emotion. Clara stood back, watching quietly. She felt relieved to see the reunion, though a little out of place now. She began to turn, thinking her part in the story was done, but Daniel's eyes lifted from his daughter and locked onto Clara. And in that instant, he knew. He could not just let this woman walk away. Daniel held Lily tightly in his arms, his chest rising and falling as if he had just finished running a race. Relief spread through him like a wave, and he kissed the top of his daughter's head again and again. "Daddy, I was scared," Lily whispered into his shoulder, her voice still trembling. "I know, sweetheart," Daniel said, his voice heavy with guilt. "I'm so sorry. I should never have looked away. But I'm here now. You're safe." As he soothed his daughter, his eyes rose and found Clara standing a few steps away. She was silent, her hands folded in front of her as if she didn't want to intrude. There was humility in her posture, a quiet grace that told him she wasn't the kind of person who needed thanks or recognition. She was simply glad the child was safe. But Daniel couldn't ignore her. Without her, who knew how long Lily would have stood there crying, terrified? Who knew if someone with less kindness might have taken advantage of her? The thought alone sent a shiver down his spine. "Excuse me?" Daniel said, his deep voice calm but filled with weight. He stepped closer, still holding Lily in his arms. "Were you the one who stayed with my daughter?" Clara looked up, startled by his direct gaze. His presence was strong, confident, commanding, the kind of man who seemed to carry authority wherever he went. For a brief moment, she felt out of place, as if her plain dress and simple shoes didn't belong near someone like him, but she answered honestly. "Yes," she said softly. "She looked frightened and alone, so I stayed with her until you came." Daniel's eyes studied her carefully. There was no pride in her words, no expectation of praise. Just sincerity. He gave a small nod. "Then I owe you more than I can say. Thank you for being there for her." Clara gave a faint smile. Anyone would have done the same. But Daniel knew that wasn't true. He had seen enough of the world to know that kindness, real kindness, was rare. Many people would have walked past, assuming the child would be fine or that someone else would help. But this woman hadn't hesitated. Lily, still in her father's arms, reached out a hand toward Clara. "Daddy, this is Clara. She made me feel safe. She told me funny stories about my bunny." Daniel glanced down at his daughter, surprised. It wasn't often that Lily opened her heart so quickly to strangers. She was usually shy, clinging to him or her nanny at home. Yet here she was, smiling at Clara as though she had known her for years. "That's very kind of her," Daniel said softly, brushing his daughter's hair. He looked at Clara again. "You must be very good with children." Clara hesitated. She didn't often talk about herself, but she answered honestly. I work as a nanny. I've been taking care of children since I was 18. I suppose I've learned how to comfort them." Daniel nodded slowly. Something in his chest stirred again, a quiet admiration he couldn't quite explain. For a moment, silence fell between them. Clara thought it was her cue to leave. She didn't belong in this moment between father and daughter. She stepped back and gave a polite smile. "I'm glad she's safe now," Clara said gently. "I should let you both be together." She turned slightly, ready to walk away, but Daniel's voice stopped her. "Wait." Clara paused, surprised. She looked back, meeting his intense gaze. "You helped my daughter when she needed someone most," Daniel said firmly. "Please, let me at least thank you properly. May I know your full name?" Clara hesitated again, not used to attention from men like him. "It's Clara Evans," she said quietly. Daniel repeated it as though memorizing it. "Clara Evans, I won't forget that." Lily tugged on his sleeve. "Daddy, can Clara come with us? Just for a little while?" The request startled both adults. Daniel blinked, caught off guard, while Clara shook her head quickly. "Oh no, sweetheart, I can't. Your daddy just found you and you should be together. I was only here to help." But Lily's eyes widened with pleading innocence. "Please, I don't want her to go yet." Daniel looked at Clara. He could see the hesitation in her face, the way she didn't want to intrude. But he also saw his daughter's unusual attachment, and that mattered more to him than anything else. Lily had been through a frightening moment. If having Clara nearby made her feel safer, he couldn't ignore it. "Would you mind joining us for a short walk?" Daniel asked, his tone polite but sincere. "Just until Lily feels completely settled." It would mean a lot to her. Clara bit her lip, unsure. She wasn't used to being invited into the lives of strangers, especially strangers who carried themselves like this man did. Still, when she saw Lily's hopeful face, she couldn't bring herself to refuse. "All right," Clara said softly. "Just for a little while." Lily's face lit up and she clapped her hands happily. Daniel gave Clara a faint smile of gratitude, then adjusted Lily on his arm as they began walking down the path together. The walk was slow, filled with the sound of crunching leaves beneath their shoes. Daniel asked Clara small questions at first: where she worked, how long she had been a nanny, what she liked about children. Her answers were modest, spoken without boasting. She talked about how children taught her patience, how their laughter made her forget her own worries. "What about your family?" Daniel asked at one point. Clara looked down, her smile fading slightly. "It's just me now. My parents passed away when I was younger and I never had siblings. But I don't feel alone when I'm with the children I care for." Daniel's chest tightened unexpectedly at her words. There was no self-pity in her tone, only quiet strength. He found himself respecting her even more. Lily, meanwhile, stayed close to Clara's side, her little hand gripping Clara's fingers whenever she wasn't holding her father. She laughed at Clara's soft jokes, and at one point, Clara even tied the ribbon in Lily's hair that had come undone. Watching the scene, Daniel felt something unusual, an image of what it might be like if Clara were a part of their lives. The thought startled him, yet he didn't push it away. As they reached the edge of the park, Daniel stopped. His sleek black car waited nearby with a driver standing patiently by the door. Clara froze, realizing suddenly who he might be. The expensive car, the posture of the driver, the authority in Daniel's presence, it all pointed to someone far beyond ordinary. Clara looked at him with quiet surprise. "You're not just any father, are you?" she asked carefully. Daniel gave a small smile, almost weary. "I'm just a father who almost lost his daughter today," he said simply. Then after a pause he added, "But yes, I also happen to run a company. People call me a CEO, though I prefer just Dad." Clara blinked, unsure what to say. She felt even more out of place now, standing in her faded dress before a man whose shoes alone probably cost more than her monthly salary. Yet Daniel didn't seem to notice the difference, or perhaps he didn't care. "Clara," Daniel said firmly, his voice lowering with sincerity, "I want to thank you properly. May I offer you something? A ride home, at least?" Clara shook her head quickly. "That's kind of you, but it's not necessary. I walk everywhere and I don't live far." Daniel studied her again, silently admiring the quiet pride in her refusal. She didn't want favors or rewards. She only wanted to do what was right. Lily leaned against Clara one last time, hugging her tightly. "Thank you, Clara. I wasn't scared when you were there." Clara's heart softened and she bent down to kiss the girl's forehead gently. You're a brave little girl, Lily. Don't ever forget that. With that, Clara gave a final nod to Daniel and began walking down the street. Her steps calm and steady. Daniel stood there, watching her go, a strange weight pressing on his chest. He had met countless people in his life, business leaders, politicians, celebrities, yet none of them had left an impression on him the way this simple young woman had. As Clara's figure grew smaller in the distance, Daniel knew one thing for certain. This was not the last time he would see her. The next morning, Clara woke early as she always did. Her little rented room was small, with a single bed, a desk, and one window that looked out onto the street. The curtains were thin and the morning light filled the space with a pale glow. Life was simple, but Clara never complained. She had learned to find peace in small things, like the chirping of birds or the smell of fresh bread from the bakery down the road. She prepared herself for the day, pulling her hair back neatly and choosing her plain but clean dress. Today she was scheduled to meet another family who needed help with their children. As she walked down the quiet street, she thought about the little girl she had met the day before, Lily. The memory of her frightened eyes tugged at Clara's heart. She wondered if the girl had slept peacefully after the ordeal. She also thought of Lily's father, the tall man with the commanding presence and deep eyes that had studied her so carefully. Clara had not expected to meet someone like him, and she still wasn't sure why her heart had raced when he had spoken to her. She shook the thought away. Their worlds were too different. He was a wealthy man, the kind who lived in a world of polished cars and towering offices. She was just a nanny who lived paycheck to paycheck. Whatever small connection they had shared would end there, or so she believed. Daniel, on the other hand, could not forget Clara. That night, after putting Lily to bed, he had sat alone in his study. His office was large, with bookshelves lined with awards and photographs from business events, yet his mind was not on work or meetings. It kept returning to the image of Clara kneeling in the park, holding his daughter as if she were her own. He had met countless people in his life, many of them powerful and important. But what struck him about Clara was how different she was. She hadn't cared who he was, hadn't asked for anything, and hadn't tried to impress him. Her only focus had been Lily. That kind of selflessness was rare. Lily herself seemed to feel the same. Before bed, she had hugged her rabbit and whispered, "I wish Clara could come play with me tomorrow." Daniel had kissed her forehead and promised she would see Clara again, though he wasn't yet sure how he would make that happen. The next morning, while sipping his coffee, Daniel made a decision. He asked his assistant to find information about Clara Evans. It wasn't easy. Clara lived a quiet life with no spotlight, but eventually, they discovered she worked as a nanny for different families in the city. By afternoon, Daniel already had a plan. Clara was at the home of a family she worked for when she heard a knock at the door. She was surprised to find a man in a suit standing there. "Are you Miss Clara Evans?" he asked politely. "Yes," Clara replied, confused. "My name is Robert. I work for Mr. Daniel Carter. He asked me to deliver this to you." The man handed her an envelope. Clara took it hesitantly and opened it after he left. Inside was a letter written in neat handwriting. "Miss Evans, I wanted to thank you again for helping my daughter yesterday. She hasn't stopped speaking about you, and it would mean the world to her if she could see you again. If you are willing, I would like to invite you to visit us this weekend. It is not an obligation, only a request. Please consider it for Lily's sake." With gratitude, Daniel Carter Clara read the letter twice, her hands trembling slightly. She wasn't used to such invitations, especially from people like him. She wondered if it was wise. She didn't want to step into a world where she didn't belong. Yet the thought of Lily's little face, her smile, and her hug made Clara pause. Perhaps it wasn't about the father at all. Perhaps it was about the child. That weekend, Clara found herself standing in front of a tall gate guarded by men in uniform. Beyond the gate rose a grand house, no, a mansion, surrounded by gardens and fountains. Clara felt small as she clutched her simple handbag and walked forward. The guard checked her name and let her inside. Her heart pounded as she approached the front door. When it opened, there stood Daniel himself, dressed casually but still carrying the same commanding aura. "Clara," he said with a smile. "I'm glad you came." Clara gave a nervous nod. "I wasn't sure if I should—" "I'm grateful that you did," Daniel interrupted gently. He stepped aside. "Please come in. Lily has been waiting for you all morning." The moment Clara entered, she heard, the sound of little feet running across the marble floor. Lily appeared, her face lighting up with joy. "Clara!" she cried, throwing her arms around her legs. Clara bent down, hugging her tightly. "Hello, Lily, I missed you." "I missed you too," Lily said, pulling her by the hand. "Come, I'll show you my room." Clara laughed softly and allowed herself to be led away. Daniel followed at a distance, watching the scene with quiet satisfaction. His daughter's happiness was everything to him, and seeing it return so brightly because of Clara filled him with gratitude. The day passed with laughter. Clara played games with Lily, read her stories, and even braided her hair. The little girl seemed happier than she had been in weeks, and Daniel noticed every detail. He watched from the doorway as Clara knelt on the floor, helping Lily build towers with wooden blocks. The warmth in Clara's eyes, the patience in her voice, the way she treated Lily with love, it was all so natural, so genuine. During lunch, Daniel finally had a moment alone with Clara. They sat at a long dining table, though Clara looked uncomfortable at first. She wasn't used to such luxury, the polished silverware, the fine plates. Daniel noticed her hesitation and leaned slightly toward her. "Please don't feel uneasy," he said gently. "This is just a house. What matters is the people in it." Clara gave a faint smile. "It's a very big house." Daniel chuckled softly. "Too big, if you ask me. Sometimes it feels empty." His words surprised her. From the outside, people like him seemed to have everything, but Clara realized in that moment that even wealth could not fill certain spaces in the heart. After lunch, while Lily napped, Daniel invited Clara to sit with him in the garden. The air was fresh, and the fountain nearby added a soft melody to their conversation. "You know," Daniel began, "Lily has had many caretakers. Some were professional, some were kind, but none of them made her smile the way she smiles with you. She feels safe with you, Clara." Clara looked down at her hands. "I'm glad I could help her. She's a very sweet girl." Daniel studied her quietly. He wanted to say more, but he held back. Instead, he asked, "Would you consider spending more time with her? Not as a replacement for anyone, but as a friend she trusts?" Clara hesitated. She had her own work, her own life, yet something inside her softened at the thought of being there for Lily. "If it helps her, I would be happy to," she said finally. Daniel nodded, relief showing in his eyes. "Thank you, Clara." As the sun dipped lower, Clara prepared to leave. Lily cried softly, not wanting her to go. Clara knelt down and hugged her again, promising she would visit soon. When Clara stepped out of the mansion and back into the quiet street, her mind was full. She had entered a world so different from her own, yet somehow she felt she belonged, not because of the wealth or the house, but because of the bond forming between her and Lily. And though she didn't want to admit it, there was something else she felt, a quiet pull toward Daniel Carter, the man whose eyes seemed to see her not as a stranger, but as someone who mattered. She walked home with a heart that was no longer light, but full of questions she could not yet answer. Amelia sat quietly at her small kitchen table, staring at the cup of tea in front of her. The steam had already faded, but she hadn't touched it. Her mind was filled with thoughts of the little girl, Lily, and of her father, Mr. Ethan Hayes. For the past few weeks, their paths had crossed again and again, sometimes in the park, sometimes at the library where Amelia volunteered, and sometimes in unexpected places where Lily insisted Amelia join them. Every meeting left Amelia with a warm yet confusing feeling. She was used to being invisible, to living a simple life where no one noticed her presence, but now she felt seen, by a child who clung to her with trust and by a man who seemed to look at her with quiet curiosity. Her heart was unsettled. She reminded herself again and again that she was just a nanny, a poor nanny who could barely pay her rent, who wore second-hand clothes, and who had nothing to offer a man of wealth and power. But no matter how many times she repeated those words, the memory of Lily's bright eyes and Mr. Hayes's calm, steady gaze kept pushing back the doubts. One evening, as she finished cleaning the small living room, Amelia's phone buzzed. She picked it up, expecting it to be her landlord or maybe her cousin. Instead, her breath caught when she saw the name on the screen, Mr. Hayes. She hesitated before answering. "Hello, Mr. Hayes," she said softly. His voice was calm, deep, and surprisingly gentle. "Amelia, I hope I am not disturbing you. Lily has been asking about you again. She misses you whenever you're not around." I was wondering if you might join us for dinner tomorrow evening. Amelia froze. Dinner? At his home? The idea sent her heart racing. She wanted to say no to protect herself from stepping into a world that wasn't hers. Yet a part of her longed to see Lily again, to bring comfort to the child who trusted her so completely. I don't want to intrude, she whispered. You wouldn't be intruding, Mr. Hayes assured her. Lily would be delighted. And honestly, so would I. His last words were spoken in a lower tone, almost as if he wasn't sure he should have said them. Amelia's hand trembled as she gripped the phone. All right, I'll come. The next evening, Amelia stood outside the grand gates of the Hayes mansion. She had borrowed a simple dress from her neighbor, one that was neat though far from glamorous. Her shoes were polished though worn. She took a deep breath before stepping forward, reminding herself that she was there for Lily, not for the wealthy man who lived inside. The mansion loomed before her, elegant and glowing with warm lights. When the door opened, Lily ran out immediately, her laughter filling the air. Amelia, you came. The child hugged her tightly, and in that moment all of Amelia's worries softened. Mr. Hayes appeared behind Lily, his expression calm but his eyes carrying something she couldn't quite name. He welcomed her politely and guided her inside. The dinner table was set beautifully with fine dishes and shining glasses. Amelia felt out of place, but Lily's chatter kept her at ease. The little girl talked about her school, her favorite books, and how she wanted Amelia to come with them to the countryside house one day. Mr. Hayes listened quietly, occasionally glancing at Amelia as if studying her. Finally, during a pause in the conversation, he spoke. Amelia, may I ask you something personal? She looked up nervously. Yes? You always seem to know exactly what Lily needs, whether she is scared, sad, or restless. It's rare to find someone who understands her so well. How do you do it? Amelia's voice was soft but firm with honesty. I just listen. Children want to be heard. Sometimes they don't need complicated answers, just someone who cares. Mr. Hayes studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. You're right. And I think that's something many adults forget. Dinner ended with Lily refusing to let Amelia leave immediately. She wanted to show her drawings, her toys, and her small indoor garden. Amelia followed happily, though she felt Mr. Hayes's gaze on her every now and then, as if he wanted to say more but chose silence. When Amelia finally prepared to leave, Lily hugged her tightly. Promise me you'll come again? Amelia smiled, stroking the girl's hair. I promise. Mr. Hayes walked her to the door. For a moment they stood in the cool night air, the silence stretching between them. Finally he said, Thank you for being here for her. She has been happier since she met you. Amelia's heart stirred, but she forced herself to keep her reply simple. She's a wonderful child. I'm lucky to know her. As she walked down the long driveway, Amelia couldn't help but feel that something had shifted. She wasn't sure what it was, but the path she had been walking, quiet, invisible, and small, was slowly widening into something larger, something she wasn't prepared for yet. The following weeks deepened the bond. Amelia found herself visiting more often, sometimes for dinner, sometimes just to spend time with Lily. Slowly, she noticed small changes in Mr. Hayes, too. He smiled more when Lily laughed. He spoke with a softer tone, and sometimes when he thought no one noticed, his gaze lingered on Amelia, filled with unspoken thoughts. Yet Amelia's heart remained heavy with doubt. She knew the distance between her world and his. He was a man of wealth, of status, of influence. She was a simple nanny struggling to make ends meet. Whatever she felt, she told herself, could never become real. But life had its own plans. One rainy afternoon, as Amelia prepared to leave the library, she found Mr. Hayes waiting outside. His car was parked by the curb and he stepped out holding an umbrella. I thought I might drive you home, he said, his tone casual but his eyes carrying something deeper. Amelia hesitated but accepted. As they drove through the quiet streets, the sound of rain tapping against the windows, he finally spoke. Amelia, I know you try to keep a distance. I can see it. But I want you to know something. You are not invisible, not to me. Not to Lily, you matter, her breath caught. No one had ever said words like that to her. She stared out the window, unable to reply. Her heart overwhelmed with emotions she couldn't untangle. That night, lying in her small room, Amelia stared at the ceiling, her mind replaying his words. She didn't know what the future held, but one thing was clear. The walls she had built around her heart were beginning to crack. And for the first time in years, Amelia dared to dream. Amelia woke up earlier than usual that morning. She sat by the small window of her room, staring at the soft light spreading across the sky. For weeks now her heart had been unsettled. The quiet life she once knew, days filled with small jobs, evenings with a book, nights alone, was no longer the same. Ever since she met Lily, her days had become brighter. And ever since Mr. Hayes had spoken those words, "You matter," she could no longer silence the voice inside her. But alongside the warmth was a fear she could not push away. She reminded herself again and again he was a man of power, she was a simple nanny. Dreams like hers didn't come true for people like her. Yet no matter how much she tried to step back, life seemed determined to pull her closer into their world. Later that day, Amelia received a message from Mr. Hayes. He invited her to join them at the countryside house for the weekend. Lily had insisted Amelia must come, and he had written, "It would mean a lot to both of us if you agreed." Amelia's heart raced. A countryside house? That was no ordinary invitation. She almost refused, but the thought of Lily's disappointed face made her pause. Finally, she replied with trembling fingers, "All right, I will come." The next afternoon, Amelia stood outside the large countryside home. It was surrounded by tall trees, a lake nearby, and gardens that looked like they had been painted by an artist. She felt small against such beauty, but Lily's laughter pulled her worries away. "Amelia, look, ducks!" Lily shouted, tugging her hand. The girl's happiness was like sunlight breaking through clouds, and Amelia couldn't help but smile. Mr. Hayes appeared soon after, dressed simply in a white shirt and dark trousers. Out here, away from the city and his office, he looked different, less like a CEO and more like a man learning to breathe freely again. Throughout the day, they spent time together, walking by the lake, flying kites, eating lunch outside under the trees. Amelia noticed how Mr. Hayes relaxed in Lily's presence, how his laughter grew more natural, how his eyes softened whenever he looked at his daughter. And sometimes when Amelia caught his gaze, she felt something stir inside her, something that frightened and warmed her at the same time. As evening fell, Lily grew tired and soon fell asleep in the garden chair wrapped in a soft blanket. Amelia gently tucked the girl in, brushing hair away from her face. Mr. Hayes watched silently, his expression unreadable. "She sleeps better when you're near," he said softly. Amelia looked up, startled by the tenderness in his voice. "She just needs comfort," she replied quietly. He took a step closer, his eyes fixed on her. "It's more than that. You've given her something I never could. You've given her a sense of safety." Amelia shook her head. "You give her everything. She adores you. I give her things," he admitted. "But you give her peace." The silence between them grew heavier, filled with unspoken emotions. Amelia's heart raced. She wanted to step back, to remind herself of the wall between their worlds. But she couldn't move, not when his gaze held her so firmly. Finally she whispered, "Mr. Hayes, you don't understand. I'm not someone who belongs here. This house, this life, even Lily's world, it's not mine. I'm just a nanny, a poor nanny who struggles every day." His expression hardened, not in anger but in determination. "Amelia, do you truly think value is measured in wealth? Do you think kindness, honesty, and the ability to heal hearts can be bought with money? If so, then I am the poor one, not you." Her eyes widened, and for a moment she couldn't breathe. No one had ever spoken to her that way. He continued, his voice steady. "I was surrounded by people who wanted what I had, who cared more for my name than for my soul. And then I met you, a woman who asks for nothing yet gives so much. You changed Lily's life. You changed mine." Tears welled in Amelia's eyes. She turned her face away, afraid he might see the depth of her feelings. "But people will talk," she whispered. "They'll say I was after your money. They'll say I used Lily to get close to you." Mr. Hayes stepped closer, his tone calm but firm. "Let them talk. What matters is truth, not gossip. And the truth is simple. My daughter loves you. I care for you. And you, Amelia, have become part of our lives in a way I never expected." Her heart trembled. Part of her longed to believe him, to step into the warmth he was offering. But the scars of years of being overlooked, ignored, and dismissed held her back. Just then, Lily stirred in her sleep, murmuring Amelia's name softly. The child's small hand reached out blindly as if searching. Amelia bent down and held it gently. Mr. Hayes watched, his voice low. You see? Even in dreams she needs you. And so do I. The words broke the last wall around Amelia's heart. Slowly, she lifted her gaze to his. The fear was still there, but so was a new courage. I don't know how to live in your world, she admitted, her voice trembling. Then let's build a new one, he said simply. For a long moment, they stood in silence, the soft sound of the lake and the whisper of the trees around them. And then, without grand gestures, without promises written in gold, their hearts quietly aligned. The days that followed were not without challenges. Amelia struggled with doubts, with whispers from others, with her own fears of not being enough. But each time, Mr. Hayes reminded her with gentle words and steady presence that she was more than enough. And Lily, with her endless love and innocent trust, became the glue that held them together. Slowly, Amelia began to accept that happiness could belong to her too. She didn't need to be rich or powerful. Her worth was in her kindness, her patience, her heart. Months later, in the same park where it all began, Amelia sat with Lily on the grass. The little girl was drawing flowers, her laughter filling the air. Mr. Hayes approached, carrying a small box in his hand. Amelia looked up, puzzled as he knelt before her. Amelia, he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. You once told me you were just a nanny, but to us you became much more. You became family. And today I want to ask you, will you walk beside us, not as a stranger, not as a helper, but as part of our lives forever? Amelia's breath caught. She opened the box to see a simple ring, nothing flashy, nothing heavy with wealth, but meaningful in its quiet beauty. Lily clapped her hands, her eyes sparkling. Say yes, Amelia, please. Tears rolled down Amelia's cheeks. She looked at Mr. Hayes, then at Lily, and finally whispered the word her heart had longed to say. Yes. The park, once a place of loneliness for Amelia, now became the place of a new beginning. A beginning filled with love, trust, and the promise that sometimes even the most ordinary lives can be touched by extraordinary grace. And for the first time in her life, Amelia no longer felt invisible. She was seen. She was loved. She was home.